$5 million.
Damn.
Yeah.
I need to up your life insurance.
No, you don't. That
Really
scares
do.
me. So, Mike's missing, and that's what it is. 5 years later.
What the hell did you just say?
That was worded weird.
Mike's missing, and that's what it is. I thought you were just going to end your story like that. That's terrible.
No, I was trying to segue into how 5 years later is when the next incident happens.
That's just seamless segue.
I'm a pro podcaster. That's what it is. So 5 years later, Denise married Brian Winchester. Now, Brian Winchester was Mike's friend in high school.
Did they stay friends?
They did. They went hunting together.
Denise and Brian did it. They went hunting together?
Brian and him, they'd go hunting together all the time. And in fact, Brian, his ex-wife now, because he married Denise.
Right.
Denise and Mike and Brian and his wife used to double date, and they would hang out all the time. And Brian was one of the first people to go looking for Mike.
Of course
on that first day.
Bet he was. He knew where he was.
And when Denise and Brian were married, they actually lived in the house that Mike and Denise lived in. I think that's strange.
Yeah, I don't...
But
I mean,
I guess...
sometimes you have to.
Yeah, there's no way around it sometimes.
But still, I wouldn't... Like, if you were to die or go missing, and I had someone else move in here, there's too many memories. Like, this is our house.
Yeah.
It feels... That's weird.
Brian also was the one that sold the life insurance policies to Mike just months before he disappeared.
Oh, my God. Why didn't he just put a fucking neon sign on him that said, I did it?
Well, Mike's mother, Cheryl, she didn't want to believe that he was dead and continued to search for information.
Oh, Cheryl.
She put up billboards and ran ads in the local newspapers asking for help. And she lobbied to have the case reopened. And in 2004, the Florida law enforcement agreed.
Thank God.
There were several police officers that thought the disappearance was strange. For example, the boat launch where his car was found was basically a patch of mud with nearby finished boat ramps that he had used previously before. Also, there was that storm that blew in the day after he went missing. This storm had winds coming from the west, and this is in northern Florida. I don't think I ever said that.
I don't think you did either. When you were talking about, I said that he could have succumbed to the water. There's no cold-ass water in Florida that gets so cold you'll die from hypothermia.
No, I guess not.
And I almost was like, if it's like blizzard weather, because that's what I envisioned. I don't know why. I thought this was like Michigan. And then I was going to ask, why are there gators in like blizzard water? But I didn't.
Okay, yeah.
Blizzard weather, not water.
Okay.
Calm down.
I'm going to start my whole story over.
Oh my God. This is really going off the rails.
Actually, the temperatures in the water were that day were about 58 degrees Fahrenheit or 14 degrees Celsius.
No big deal.
Well, that's cold for water.
No, I agree, but I don't think you die right away, like get thrown out of a boat and die
Probably
like
not.
you would in Michigan.
No.
Where I assumed this was happening.
The storm that blew in should have blown his boat towards Georgia's side of the lake, away from Florida.
Didn't.
But it was found 200 yards from the mud pit boat ramp.
That's my new band name. Mud Pit Boat Ramp.
Also, when they got to the boat, the engine was shut off and it was full of gas.
And if he were to have been driving and hit a stump and thrown out, he wouldn't have shut off the engine.
No. And in fact, the manufacturer of the boat was actually asked about it and was like, yeah, that's strange because the boat should have just kept running and running and running until it ran out of gas.
Right.
Investigators also found out that Mike didn't usually hunt alone. They also learned that alligators don't feed during the winter because of the cold temperatures. They're too busy
that blistery 58.
Well, it's too cold for them.
No, I know.
Yeah, an expert who the authorities consulted said that in those temperatures, they're just busy trying to maintain their body temperature. The water inside the waders was filtered and it had no human remains found in them. It was also thought to be strange that Mike would have been wearing his waders if he was still traveling the lake. A friend of Mike said that he's huge into safety, and you never put your waders on because if you go into the water,
Right.
it's dangerous. So that apparently is a thing. And originally, they thought this was a hunting accident, a boat accident, and so nothing was treated like a crime scene.
Right.
So footprints everywhere. Mike's car and his boat were returned to the family.
So they didn't dust for fingerprints or anything
None of that
like
was
that.
done. And a bunch of the other items weren't even kept by the police that they found. So even though they don't believe the alligator theory, there really isn't much that law enforcement could do. In October of 2007, Mike's older brother found the serial number and a picture of a .22 caliber pistol that Mike had inherited from their father when he had died.
Okay.
This was the only firearm that Denise didn't return to the family.
You shady bitch.
Yeah. The ATF, which is the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, in case you don't know.
I'm familiar.
They found the gun in the house, and it was given to law enforcement for testing and stuff, but...
How are they going to test it? They don't have a body. They don't have a...
I know, and that's why I think nothing
Yeah.
was released. No information was released on it because they couldn't find anything.
And they can't test for DNA. It's touched everybody's hands.
Yeah. In 2008, a psychic was brought in
Yes.
with a forensic psychologist... What?
Say it out loud.
A forensic psychological profiler.
I love them too.
They thought that remains would be found at a different boat launch in the lake.
Okay.
Cadaver dogs were brought in, but nothing was found. I know. I thought we were going to have a win for a psychic
I
there.
freaking love psychics who solve crimes.
So January 1st, 2012, this is now 12 years later, Mike's mother, Cheryl, she started to write one letter every day to the governor, asking for another...
every day,
Cheryl?
Mm-hmm.
Asking for another agency to investigate her son's disappearance instead of the Florida law enforcement. She wanted to bring other people in. She wrote over 200 letters.
Wow.
And
I wish you loved me like Cheryl loves her son.
If you go missing, I will write...
You'd give up after 5 letters. Your hand would cramp. You'd be out.
So after over 200 letters, she starts to wonder why she hasn't gotten a response yet. I mean, nothing at all.
Right.
She found out that all of her letters were forwarded to the Florida law enforcement.
Oh.
That she didn't even want
that she was
investigating.
tattletelling on.
Uh-huh. Those letters were never opened and just stuck in the case file.
Oh, I'd be pissed.
Yeah. She said, they could not have hurt me more if they had punched me in the face.
Yeah, I bet.
In 2012, Denise and Brian, who were still married, they separated.
Good.
Because
now someone's going to start talking, huh?
Because of his sex addiction.
That's bullshit. He's a cheater.
Yeah. And Denise filed for divorce in 2015.
Okay.
In August of 2016, there's a lot of dates in this story.
I like it. I like a timeline.
Denise was driving back to her job at Florida State University and was talking on the phone with her sister when she realized Brian climbed over the back seat of her car and grabbed the phone from her. He started yelling at her and showing her a gun, telling her what to do and stuff. Yeah. She later said that this was because she wasn't answering his phone calls and she had blocked his texts and stuff.
What a psychopath.
Yeah. So instead of doing what he was telling her to do, she decides to pull into a CVS parking lot.
Smart.
Which is a pharmacy, for those who don't know.
They charge so much money for everything and they never have COVID tests.
And their receipts are so long. It's ridiculous.
I'm just kidding, CVS. Don't pull your advertisements.
No, we love y'all.
There's no CVS advertisements.
Brian, he goes on and he's telling her how he wanted to kill himself and he didn't want the divorce. And she calms him down and somehow drives him back to his truck. Out of Denise's car, he pulled out a blanket and a plastic sheet and a spray bottle of bleach.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And some other tool from Denise's car that I'm assuming he had put in there. He apologized for his behavior. Denise promised she wouldn't go to the police, but of course she immediately drove to the police.
Good girl.
A friend of Brian's, who was interviewed by the police, said Brian was worried that Denise, because of the divorce, Denise was going to go to the cops and tell them about a guy who had died about 12 years earlier. That's just what his friend told the police. He didn't know details or anything. Brian got arrested and charged with kidnapping, domestic assault, and armed burglary, and he got held without bond.
Good.
For kidnapping Denise. In December of 2017, Brian was sentenced to 20 years in prison for the kidnapping and 15 years probation after that. His attorney said that he was suicidal because of the divorce, and his mother had just been diagnosed with terminal cancer.
Not good enough reasons to kidnap someone.
No, but that's why he was arguing for the 10-year minimum sentence. The prosecutor, however, wanted the 45-year max sentence, saying that Brian was going to commit a murder-suicide and only wasn't able to because Denise
talked him out of it.
Yeah. The next day, a special agent with law enforcement announced that they had found Mike's body and he was the victim of a homicide.
Where did they find him? And this was how many friggin' years later? 12?
Yeah.
So he's bones.
Yes.
Skeletal remains.
Yes. Come to find out, the cops found Mike in October, which was 2 months before the sentencing of Brian. There were even some clothes that were recovered that Mike was wearing. So stuff, I guess, was in good enough condition. They did DNA tests with his mother to determine that's how they found out it was Mike. So Brian talked to the police and told them what happened. So what happened was Brian had convinced Mike to go out on Lake Seminole. And once they got in the water, Brian had convinced Mike to put on his waders. And during the interview, Brian is saying, like, I don't remember what I said, but I must have said, we're almost to the spot or we need to hurry. And so I convinced him to put his waders on. And as soon as he got his waders on, he had him stand up and then he pushed him out of the boat. Brian was hoping that his waders would fill up and he would drown.
Right.
But he sees Mike struggling and he's taking off his waders because I'm sure they're just snap buckles.
Right.
They just pop right off. They're like suspenders.
Overalls,
like you said. Sorry. Yeah. And he makes it to a stump. Brian circles him with the boat and he kind of starts to panic. He's like, I don't know how I'm going to get out of this now. This is supposed to be an accidental drowning and he's not drowning.
Right.
So he loads his shotgun and circles him and gets close enough and shoots him in the face.
Oh, poor Mike.
Yeah.
Imagine watching your best friend circling you in a boat.
Loading a shotgun, who had just pushed you out.
Oh, that's devastating.
Yeah, they were like high school friends.
That's devastating.
Yeah.
So did he say if Denise was in on it? Surely.
Yeah, he says, basically I pulled the trigger, but Denise was the one that wanted it done. In May of 2018, Denise was arrested.
Good.
And this happened just minutes after a grand jury indicted her for first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder and accessory after the fact.
Good.
So Brian was serving time for the kidnapping, but was never convicted of the murder, even though he admitted to the crime. And that's what I think the deal was made. Like, you've got immunity if you just tell us what's happening, tell us what happened in regards to this murder. Because they're like, we want Denise. We don't, we care about...
Yeah, you're already serving time.
Right.
We want to get Denise.
In February of 2019, Denise was sentenced to life in prison. Her and Mike's daughter was awarded all of Mike's assets and money from the insurance.
Oh, good.
January of 2020, Denise appealed her conviction. The murder conviction was overturned, which I guess technically because she didn't do the murder.
Trigger, yeah.
But not the conspiracy to commit murder or anything. So basically, Brian and Denise, they wanted to be together. And Brian didn't want to kill his wife, but actually he had said that one of the plans they almost came up with was all four of them were going to go out onto the Gulf of Mexico, go boating, and...
Only two come back?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I think that's why they decided to not go with that idea.
Right.
They basically wanted to be together.
And they couldn't just tell their spouses they wanted a divorce like normal humans?
No. Denise's family didn't... I don't know if they didn't believe in divorce, but they looked down on it for sure.
I bet they don't really like murder either.
I don't think so. That was the death of Jerry Michael Williams, also known as Mike.
Poor Mike, man.
Yeah.
The two people you're supposed to trust like the most, your best